joins us live now.
I'm here on Bobby Court off of Chautauqua Road, where neighbors say a police chase came through this neighborhood. The chase ending inside of a home right behind me. Now, right now, several law enforcement agencies are on the scene. The Department of Public Safety, Georgia State Patrol, and Columbus Police Department all here at this moment. A Russell County resident has lost his life this afternoon after not complying with Russell County Sheriff Deputy's orders. Around 12 this afternoon, Russell County water workers arrived to Rare Road to cut off water at the victim's residence. Upon their arrival, the victim fired shots at the utility workers. I am here on the corner of Hilton Ave and Country Club Road, and behind me you see investigators are still on the scene. Columbus police arrived on this scene around 2 p.m. in reference to a shooting. Buddy Bryan tells News Leader 9 64-year-old Ursula Dietz and a 19-month-old was killed in this home here on Hilton Avenue. I'm here along Buena Vista Road where 58-year-old David Woodley was standing at 6 a.m. Wednesday morning waiting for his bus. While waiting, he was struck by a vehicle that did not stop. With a focus on saving lives, the developers of Bola Wrap felt it was important to give law enforcement officers a less lethal option to get an unruly person in custody.
Law enforcement is kind of limited, with the resources, with the tools that they have on their tool belt. So oftentimes officers would have to go hands-on with folks, and then either the officer or the individual or both were injured, or they would have to go to a different device like a taser, and unfortunately sometimes even a gun. Now that a less lethal option is available, Captain Eric Lohr says this new technology has been great for the LaGrange Police Department. Our officers really like having that device. I think they're realizing, it's taken a little time, but they're realizing that going hands-on with folks is not always the best option. If there is an incident where a suspect is not cooperating or someone is nonverbal and not communicating, the LaGrange Police Department uses technology like this. When needed by an officer, the Bola Wrap is pointed like a TV remote. And I say wrap, wrap, wrap. It then releases a Kevlar rope with anchors. Officer Hassan Harb has used this technology on his shift various times.
It was really effective. First of all, it scares everybody. So you're kind of not ready for it when it first go off. And just imagine if we were ready for it and it still scares us, it just shocks somebody. And they literally froze. On July 24th, Officer Hassan and several LaGrange police officers were honored by Wrap Technologies, the company that supplies LPD with the Bola Wrap. Officer Hassan says this technology gives them an opportunity to not look like the bad guys. It's a better tool for everybody to use without us being the bad guys, like we say, because perception is half the battle. So I really think it's invaluable, and we should have introduced it to the equation a long time ago.
I'll never forget it.
Back in November of 2022, Martha Minifield was arrested for failure to pay.
Not paying your trash bill.
What?
Yes, ma'am.
Never ever forget them handcuffs. I can take being in that cage, but them handcuffs, if they handcuffing you at the front door and putting you in that police car, I'll never forget it, ever.
Minifield says her arrest is something that still makes her emotional.
I am so sorry, but the law is the law, Miss Minifield.
I think about it now sometimes, and I just go to cry because they hurt my feelings. That's the only thing I can say about my feelings, was hurt. So.
Houston rapper Trey the Truth found out about Martha's ordeal through social media. He says it was something that made him angry.
So with her feelings being hurt like that is like she honestly didn't know what to do, And for me, at that point, I feel like I felt like I just needed to protect her in some way.
Around the end of last year, Trey the Truth traveled over 700 miles from Houston to Valley, taking Miss Minifield to Walmart, allowing her to choose anything she wanted.
I said, this right here is something else, So he came and asked me, he said, get whatever you want to. out of here. He said, don't worry about it. I said, I won't. I said, it's just not real.
Trey says while shopping, she mentioned she would love to have a recliner. At that moment, Minifield did not know what was in store for her.
What I did was I teamed up in Houston with Bell Furniture, and we furnished her house. You know, we got actually she got maybe 4 or 5 recliners now, you know, new beds, dressers, kitchen, dining room sets, you know, it's just different stuff.
Trey says they aren't stopping there. After finding out Miss Minifield does not have central air or heating, he is now currently working to give her home an entire makeover.
Every time it rains, it floods in our house. So even with me putting new stuff in there, it floods in there. So it's like, so now I'm trying to find a contractor with the heart that I got that understands it's about trying to help our people, you know, because that could be one of our grandmothers or one of our relatives.
Life is short, and you don't want to take it for granted.
Life is even more precious now for Alexander Santos, who learned last fall he has terminal cancer.
I was officially diagnosed with non-seminal germ cell tumor on November 23rd.
And while Santos has been fighting for his life, one of his last wishes was to kiss the bride.
And I now pronounce them husband and wife, and you may embrace.
Santos has been in and out of the hospital since November. This past weekend, Santos had a conversation with his nurse that he wanted to marry his girlfriend he has been dating for 3 years. Just 4 days later, at Piedmont Columbus Regional, they were standing hand in hand.
It's just like a bucket list. I'm not looking forward to a lot of time on the earth. So it's just something I've always wanted, and especially with the person I love. So.
The oncology staff helped put this wedding together, getting a cake donated from Publix and throwing them a full wedding reception.
For Piedmont, all we want to do is make every life special so that even in their last moments, they remember the good things, not the bad.
Doctors say Santos could live long enough to be married a few months or several years.
We just want justice done for Chris. He deserves it. We deserve it.
According to law officials, on January 25th of 2002, Mr. Tompkins was working with a survey crew in a wooded area in Ellerslie, Georgia. He was with 3 co-workers who worked approximately 50 feet from one another. One of the employees looked away from Tompkins for a moment. By the time he glanced at his area again, Tompkins had disappeared around noon.
They called me about a few minutes to 5. They tell me that they couldn't find him. Then they found one of his boots.
With Christopher not being seen since 12 p.m. that afternoon, Mackenzie says she still doesn't understand why she didn't get the call immediately after he went missing.
I was shocked that it had happened that morning, and they hadn't said anything to me. So I think it happened around lunchtime.
With little answers from the co-workers Tompkins was last seen with, the family conducted their own search that evening. With no sight of Chris, they were back the next morning searching.
So early Saturday morning, we got together as a family and friends and everyone that could come. And we all combed the woods, the area where they were surveying supposedly. And we went through and we could not find Chris.
Although they did not find Chris, they did find things that belonged to him.
At the barbed wire fence in the area where they were surveying, there was change on the ground. There was a snag of the pants that Chris had on, which is a pair of navy blue Dockies, was in the barbed wire fence. And one of his Timberland boots that he was wearing at the time was found at that area.
Harris County Sheriff Mike Jolly says they took this case very seriously and did everything by the book, searching in ponds nearby and using cadaver dogs. With limited resources, GBI took over the case, leading them to find the other shoe.
So the assumption was at the time he walked off the job site, which was consistent with what the coworker said. Walked through the woods, went over toward the interstate. We believed that he got into an automobile and just left the area.
With no call from Tompkins to his mother in over 4 weeks, Sheriff Jolly's assumption changed.
My biggest fear is that when he came up missing in 2002, he went to a large city, and right after he came up missing, he might have overdosed, or something else might have happened to him, and because he had no identification on his that city went ahead and disposed of him.
The family thinks differently. Tompkins' family says Chris didn't have a drug problem.
I don't believe that Chris walked away. I don't believe he disappeared with one shoe. Who's going to walk around with one boot on in the cold weather on the rural road? I just don't believe that happened. They know what happened to Chris. They just not telling.
The GBI has formed a cold case unit. Tompkins' family says knowing that gives them hope.
Yeah, it's about time, because it took a long time. It doesn't seem like they was really actually trying to find out what happened to Chris.